actually got a few questions. I don't want to hog the time though. My first one would be
time's up. No, go ahead. I'm just kidding.
I want you to know I did sign up for your program for the boot camp, but I've been too busy doing my own workout to look at yours yet, but I promise I will. Pardon me? So I'd like to know now, am I overdoing my exercise program? I went from walking and jogging off and on for a half an hour and end up, used to be able to do a mile. Now I'm down to like 7/8 of a mile, 3/4 of a mile. And it's not easy, but I can tell I'm pushing myself, and my oxygen levels dropping down to 93, 92 just momentarily at the end of it. Am I doing not enough or too much? I mean, comparatively, plus I walk 4 more miles during the day outside, and I do try to do 20 minutes of weight on the weight machine every night. So I do that 6 or 7 times a week. I mean, is that comparable?
I think I'll step out here. I think you should take the rest of it. I think you should just take the rest of the lecture. Go for it. What else are you doing? No, that's a great question. The answer is maybe and maybe not. But sometimes it's not a question of how much, it's what and how, right? So it's not a question of working harder sometimes. I mean, it's cliche to say work smarter, not harder. But if I could tell you this, the biggest mistake, in my opinion, that people make when it comes to working out on a treadmill is they overemphasize speed and even overemphasize jogging to walking and using an incline. So one of the things that we're adding to our program, well, we have 2 things that I'm really excited about adding to our program this year. One of them is a treadmill that goes up to 40% incline. And the reason for that is because there are streets in New York City where I'm sure the incline is 30 to 40%, right? And your body gets good at doing what you ask it to do. So in rehab, if we ask your body to work out at this level, but your life requires this level, well, you're going to be in better shape, but you're not necessarily going to be able to do better in life, right? So we need to overextend that. But jogging is not always it. And you probably feel that in some cases, jogging is actually easier than walking up a hill or something like that. I encourage you to, to look at the chapter called Treadmill 101, because, we've gotten a lot of bang out of incline. And so, for example, if it all has to do with MET level and metabolic equivalence. And what that means is if everybody who's not talking could just mute, if you don't mind, please. I'm hearing like a very strange humming. But the thing is that by staying on flat ground, you really limit how hard can you work. And in many cases, in fact, in most cases, you can significantly lower the speed. And if you start using the incline more effectively in different combinations, you will get a lot stronger. And in Treadmill 101, which is a chapter in the book, I, number one, give you a metabolic chart. So you can figure out how many METs is it at every speed with every incline combination. But then I also give you workouts in the back. And I give you kind of like, okay, once you can do this, go to this. Once you can do this, go to this. Once you can do this, go to this. And it does sound, Richard, like you're doing a lot. Like you're putting in a lot of time, you're putting in a lot of track, you're putting in a lot of hours. But I think that you can be more efficient and actually get better by shifting to maybe more vigorous in terms of workload and not so much duration. As far as a saturation of 92 or 93%, perfectly fine. Okay. There's something called the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. Am I able to share my screen at all? Let me see if I could share my screen. It looks like I can. So let me just show you one thing. So if you look at this curve here, okay, this is a representation of kind of how your body utilizes and gives up oxygen. And if you look at 90%, which is here, and then you look at 100% over here, you can see that this is very flat here, right? You can see that there's not much motion. But I spoke about a tipping point before, and you notice that kind of like once you get to this 90% here, then there's a giant drop, right? That's like the big roller coaster drop at the top of the cyclone. And that's why 90% is so significant. So it's almost like if we're at the Grand Canyon together and I want to take your photo and we're standing 10 feet from the canyon, you can go anywhere within those 10 feet and we're good. But if you take that 11th step, then, you know, things change quite dramatically. And that's why when I hear people say, well, it's okay to go to 88%, I'm not in agreement with that for a number of reasons. Number one is physiologically, if you look at what I just showed you on the curve, there's a giant drop at 88%. And there's actually a bigger difference between 91 and 88 than there is between 91 and 99, right? Because the curve is flat on top. The other thing is a lot of times people say, well, you know what? I drop down, but I've come up quickly once I stop, right? And the thing about that is, like, imagine if you were in a glass kind of booth and I filled it up with smoke, but then we removed the smoke very quickly, right? I mean, would you find that acceptable? Probably not. You'd still have the impact of that smoke. And the problem with hypoxia or hypoxemia, or, you know, anything where your saturations go low, is that that sends a signal to the body that something's not wrong. I mean, something is wrong, sorry. And the problem with that is the body then triggers a response, like an autonomic nervous system response, and your heart beats faster and harder. And, you know, the pulmonary circulation, the pressures can increase significantly. And so, you know, a lot of people develop secondary pulmonary hypertension as a result of hypoxia or hypoxemia. And so I think it's important to stay saturated. I think at 92 or 93, you're perfectly fine. I like people to be at least 93, and it's not an arbitrary reason, but the reason why it makes me feel comfortable is because most oximeters have kind of a plus or minus of 3%. So if it says 93 and it's your oximeter happens to be negative 3%, well, then you're still good at 90. But if it says 90 and, you know, your is negative 3, then you're really at 87. It's like, I had a job over the summer. I had to drive from New York City to Southampton every day, and not every day, 3 days a week to see a client. And I had this game I would play with myself, which is I'd look at my, yes, I do realize the odd wordplay of what I just said, but it's a game I would play with myself, like on my road out. And my car tells me how many miles I'm supposed to have left on a tank of gas, right? And I'd always try to see how low I could get it without actually having to stop for gas. And that's what a lot of people do with their oxygen. And it could work most times, but on that time that it doesn't work, it could give you trouble.